All right, we're live, and good evening, everyone. Kind of an unusual subject to be talking about when you're talking about racing, but it is a part of racing, and those are the injuries and the recoveries, and I mean, just things that you probably don't think about when you go racing. So it's kind of a taboo subject. A lot of people don't like to talk about it, but these fine gentlemen came on. We're going to talk a little bit about it, and I'm going to pass it around. First time around, we're just going to introduce ourselves. How long you've been riding, how long you've been racing, what you're doing now. And then I'll start it off with my most recent accident, which I'm still wearing the back brace. And we'll go around and talk a little bit about it and some of the hardships it does in fact cause and how you may be able to mitigate some of that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim and we'll just go right around the clock.
Jim Rich. I've been started riding a dirt bike back in the 90s, just out of high school. I couldn't have any kind of two wheels at home. Mom was dead set against that. So I got a dirt bike, kept it at the girlfriend's house, rode that for a while, transitioned into road bikes. That was little mid-90s to riding around with them, having fun. Me and a buddy of mine were out riding. We ended up meeting up with two other guys. Turned out to be Jesse and Ed Sando, both of who raced. Ed doesn't race anymore. He had his own accident. But then I started coming up to the track to watch them race, travel a little bit, helping them out, did a track day, and then said, oh, no, I got to do this. And it didn't help that Jesse said, hey, you're up here all the time. Why don't you just race? So I did. And I've been with Seacoast Sports Cycle now since 2000 I started. It's been fun. 2002, I started with the Karen Hornbecker Fund. I'll go a little more into that later, but been a member of that since 2002. And it's been a good ride.
All right, very good. Chris?
So Chris, I rode a lot of lightweight stuff. I guess I was probably from watching your show. I'm a bit on the late bloomer side for riding. I didn't start riding until after college, actually. Started riding on the street about 2011. 2013, did my first track day towards the end of the season, got the bug pretty hard. Fortunately, someone sold me their race prep SV. So 2014, 2015 did tons of track days. But I was up there hanging out with Adam Kells from AK Race Fab before it was AK Race Fab, helping him in the pits, and the Seacoast crew helping them out. And they really encouraged me to get into racing. So 2016 through until my injury in 18 was racing up there. But after that, I was a referee in 2019, kind of had a hiatus. And then since 2021, I've been helping out Seacoast Sports Cycle with the Dunlop tires. So, yeah, that's kind of my history right there.
All right,
Sean.
Again. Well, I'm not much of a talker. My name's Sean Clossy, race number 703. I started racing actually in 2020 when I had my really bad accident that a lot of people kind of know about. We'll come back to that. But riding in general, I started when I was about 16 with dirt bikes. My mom wasn't really for it, but I still did it. And then just was street riding until I, all the way growing up. I was in the military for a while, so I didn't get to ride as much. But after I got back, I started finding, in the track stuff. And then 2020 was when I first started racing. So.
All right, we'll pass it over to Adam.
So my name is Adam Clark. I've been riding dirt bikes for all my childhood. Had a probably like a good 5-year stint of being off two wheels. Then started a career, so that kind of took over. Then got reintroduced to motorcycle racing in 2005, going down to watch a buddy. And I'd heard about these motard bikes, and I was like, wow, that sounds pretty cool. So I went down and watched him. The guy I was living with at the time, he had the funds. I didn't. He started racing in 2006. He had a no pickup truck. I did. So I ended up going down and bringing all the stuff with him every weekend, and I ended up getting booked. 2007, took Penguin School on a motard. and I've raced a motard since 2007. So I was born and bred a lightweight guy. I love the dirt bikes. I love the family around the dirt bikes. Um, they're a lot of fun. They're challenging because you're out there sometimes on bikes. Kramers, when they came around, it was like, oh my god, 80 something horsepower against 50 horsepower dirt bike. It's been fun, and I've spent all of my racing career on motards. I've dabbled a few Penguin days. I'm a coach for Penguin on some bigger bikes, R6s, Ducatis, things like that. But I always go back to the motards. They're just so much fun.
All right. So now we'll get to the reason that we're all here tonight, and that's the subject of injuries. And I had planned on doing something about injuries and how you can mitigate it and things that you need to be prepared for. And then, of course, I go down south and I end up getting injured. So I'll talk a little bit about my injury, my most recent injury that's kind of got me in this fancy little back brace right now. And some of the things you need to think about. Now, I used to live down there, so we've got a lot of friends. And we had a place we were going down to stay with friends for a week. And then I was going to race that last weekend, and then we were going to come home. And we get down there. Weather was beautiful. I love that track. Roebling Road is it's an amazing track. It's really fast. And they just repaved it last year. So, I mean, you had grip galore anywhere on the track. And this was the first time I've ever raced with ARMA as well. Now, ARMA doesn't have a break between experts, amateurs. It's just show up, get licensed, and race. So you've got all different skill levels in the different classes. And another problem they have is they will lump some classes together that probably shouldn't be lumped together. Now, I was riding my SV650 lightweight twin, but we had three other classes. There were 49 bikes on the grid. So we got three other classes with us that were much slower than we were. So we had to, I mean, lap 3, we're already knee deep in people trying to weave our way through. And what happened to me was turn 3, it's about 100-mile-an-hour corner, and it's a sweeping left turn. And I was fighting with a couple of other guys for third place in the Sound of Thunder 3 class. Got caught up in the moment, and didn't want them to get away from me. They got by them pretty clean. And all of a sudden it was like, I'm either going to take this guy out or I need to ride off the track. And I just rode off the track. I split in between them, stood it up, rode it off the track, hit the grass. And now I've got the sand trap and a tire wall coming at me really quick. And there was no way I was going to get the bike stopped, no way I was going to get it turned. So I just bailed and ended up bouncing, landed on top of the tire wall. Had my butt stuck down in one of the tires, so I couldn't really get right up. It was right in front of my wife. She was standing right there at the fence. Anything that could be really bad was really bad. It was right there. And I had the wind knocked out of me. Luckily, I was wearing a Tech 5 air vest, and that deployed. So I think, I don't know if that knocked the wind out of me or just smacking on the tire wall that knocked the wind out of me. I'm not sure which. But once I caught my breath, I gave everybody a thumbs up. I was able to get out of that tire, roll over the dirt berm. And I thought maybe, just having the wind knocked out of me, I had some left flank pain. Didn't feel too bad, but of course the adrenaline was pumping. Went back to the pit, went back to the place we were staying that night with friends. And at 6 o'clock the next morning, I was taking the magic bus ride to the hospital because I couldn't get up. I couldn't even raise my arms up. And lo and behold, I ended up with 3 fractures, 3 vertebrae with the, I forget what they call it. It's a process, the little nubs that stick off of your vertebrae.
The pedicles.
I fractured 3 of those, but they were non-displaced, so there was no surgery needed. Lots of pain, bruised my collarbone. I've got this big orange bruise over here on the right. And if you saw the picture on the thumbnail, I wear those little silk scullies under my helmet. Well, I guess my helmet twisted and I had a raspberry burn that looked really bad over here on the right side of my head. And some of the things that I started thinking about afterwards, we were lucky. We were staying with friends. That wasn't an issue. I've got good insurance. I spent 3 days in the hospital, 2 nights, 3 days. Um, all of that worked out well for us. I notified my work, told them, hey, I'm not going to be in for a while. So we were extended about a week on our trip. And these are all things that you really have to think about. Um, like I said, I wasn't right. I don't think I was riding over my head. I was just trying to do accident avoidance. And it just happens. It's a part of racing. It's not if you crash, it's when you crash because you're going to have a mishap. And I don't want that to sound bad to anybody who's thinking about getting into racing because a lot of times, people go down almost every weekend. You get a scrape, a bruise, a bump. You get back up, you fix whatever you need to fix on your bike, and you're back out for the next round. This one, 4 to 6 weeks in a back brace. They're going to do another CAT scan on my back. Everything should heal up. I should be 100%. And hopefully I plan on being out there for round one coming up. So that's basically this accident. And some of the things that I was thinking about was, you have to be able to think about your job. How is it going to affect your job if you're not there for a few days or if something like that? I was 1,000 miles away from home. So that's something else you have to think about too. Luckily, I don't care what track you go to. I don't care what organization it is. If you get hurt at the track, people there are going to help you. They come out of the woodwork. I mean, we got my trailer all loaded up, got all that stuff done before I left the track. But that's just the racing community in general. Everybody's going to bend over backwards to help you. And at least that's what I've found. The accident I had back in '97 at Daytona, same thing. I rode on the bike on the back of the crash truck coming off the track. And then after that, we were on our way to Daytona Hospital. And that was a pretty good shoulder injury, which I refused to have fixed for about 10 years. I just kind of powered through it. But that's the accident that I just went through. And psychologically, I don't think it's going to have much effect on me getting back on the bike because it wasn't something I did. It was something I had to do to avoid something. Whereas when you crash, a lot of times it might be in the back of your mind when you first get back on the bike and you have to take your time getting back into it. But we'll just wait and see come April because I'm ready to go. I got my new Aprilia and the SV that was for sale is not for sale right now until I can kind of patch it up a little bit, and then it'll be back on the block. But so that's the story of what just happened with me. And, I don't want to disparage anyone from getting into the hobby or the sport because you can go skiing. No matter what you do, any kind of sport, there's a chance you're going to get injured. Even golfing. I had a friend of mine last year that got whacked in the head with a golf ball and he had a big old knot on it. He said he was out of work for about 2 weeks because he had a mild concussion from it. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. You can get injured. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jim. And Jim's on the board of directors for a nonprofit that helps us out quite a bit. And I'll let him talk about that.
And so, first, Craig, didn't you know the rule? If the bike's for sale, you don't ride it.
Yeah, I know. I had already entered the race though before this all happened. So
yeah. So, all right. So the Karen Hornbecker Memorial Fund, it was established in 1999. Pat and Tom Fournier wanted to do something to remember Karen Hornbecker. She was, I never met her. She passed away in '95. started coming to the track after that. There are still plenty of guys at the track that knew her, raced with her, were friends with her. She was a nurse. She was the medical director for LRS. She pioneered a lot of the how to take care of a motorcycle crash, how to remove a helmet without snapping somebody's neck, doing everything properly. She was loved by everybody. She rode on the street. And then after she passed, and Tom actually had a big crash himself. Some people know Tom Fournier. He's minus one leg because of a crash. And so they wanted to do something to remember Karen. He took all his winnings from one of his race years, and they started the Karen Hornbecker Memorial Fund. It's a nonprofit 501c3. We raise money through donations, raffles, assorted. People will come up to us just during the race weekend and make donations. There is a board of directors. There's Jim Smith. He's the longest tenured. Myself, Scott Greenwood, Alan Hathaway, and Bill Coolahan. We can assist riders that have been injured, and it's significant injuries. You got to be out of work, maybe spend some hospital time, but it's a one-time payment that is for immediate needs. You got to feed the family. Kids need to eat. It's not insurance. There are some. We have a bylaws which. Our website isn't working right now. We're working on that, so try to get that up and running. But you need to be a NEMRR licensed racer. Any NEMRR event, points paying event, is eligible. So all of New Hampshire. A couple years ago when we went to New Jersey, because it was points paying, we did open it up to say, okay, if somebody get hurt, a NEMRR rider got hurt in New Jersey, then it could be taken care of. Out of town guys that come up to New Hampshire won't be covered. The big thing, obviously this year with the Classic and all these other people coming in, you have to have a NEMRR license. You reach out to any one of us. We have a hornbeckerfund@gmail.com. Myself, Bill, Scott, we're on Facebook. Around the track. Just come up to us, any of us. We have applications. You just got to fill out a quick application. We go over, the board of directors votes on it. I think in the years that I've been doing this, we've only denied one application, but that was only because you have 30 days from the incident, and it was like 2 months later. So we have to adhere to our bylaws so that legally we don't get in trouble. But the injuries that most people get paid for are significant. We do not disclose who received funds. Whoever receives funds, if they want to talk about it, that's on them. But we don't disclose any of that. And like I say, we're always around. Come find us at the track, on Facebook, private messaging, and we can do what we can to help you out.
Any major injuries for you, Jim?
I've been fortunate. I don't have major injuries. I've taken a tumble or two or three or dozens. But the worst was I fractured the navicular, actually on both hands, thankfully not at the same time, different years. But one was surgery, the other one was just a cast. and then the other's been bumps and bruises. So I have been fortunate enough that I don't know why I bounce, but I do.
Well, I'm glad we got you on here to talk about the fund because
Thank
and you
you.
mentioned it at every riders meeting and you kind of called me out on it when we talked the other day
Yep.
because I was like, geez, I didn't even know about this. And he says, well, I mentioned it at every riders meeting. I'm not to call you out or anything. And I'm like, I'm at the riders meeting. My mind is somewhere else. I'm thinking about getting on the bike and getting out there and I'm not really paying attention to anything that's not directly related to me and my race. So, but I'm glad we got you on here to talk about it because that's fantastic. Chris,
Yeah, so I got 2018 pretty serious crash. Prior to that, the previous years of racing and track days, kind of like Jim, I bounced. Turn 3 was my favorite place to crash. But 2018, it was Sunday of the August round, and it was lightweight superbike amateur, which has you gridded up with novice 3 and 4. So I was 2018 was my banner season. At the end of the season, I was going to be petitioning to bump expert. Later on, people were like, "Why didn't you bump sooner?" But came around, got the back markers, and I had to make a split-second decision. I had 3 novices that I had to take care of and pass. One was pulling away, and I'm coming up turn 4, and one was pulling away, and there was 2 that split directly apart. So one's all the way to the left side of the track, one's all the way towards the flags. And I'm like, all right, I'm going right between you. Let's hope this works. So the guy on my right, I pass him, no issue. The guy on my left, so I'm on an SV650, Gen 1 stock bike, but carrying a bit of speed. The guy on my left, RC390, he carried way more speed than I think he realized. And this is why I'm a huge advocate for holding your line on the track everywhere. Hold your line on the track. It doesn't matter if you're on the front stretch, on the back stretch, 3, 4, doesn't matter. Hold your line. Be predictable. So he wanted the spot of pavement that I was on, and he wanted it right away. So he bumped into me, and I had about 2-3 feet to go into the grass. He bumped into me once. I was right on the paint line on the right hand side of the track. And now we're going downhill. So I'm throttle pegged on the SV 4th gear. He hits me again. I go in the grass. Fight or flight kind of took over, and I stabbed the front brakes because I started to see turn 6, but I was pointed towards the tunnel and the hill. And I'm like, if I don't do something, I'm launching over the tunnel, and that's not going to be good for anybody. Stabbed the front brakes, and I went down quick. Started to tumble. I remained conscious through the whole thing. So sadly, I remember tumbling. Somebody later on, I won't name any names, but did get photos of my crash. The bike landed on me a couple of times, once on my back, once on my stomach. And I came to a stop, did not get up. So I had what I thought was just the wind knocked out of me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to be fine. And being every good tough motorcycle racer, once I was able to breathe and the paramedics came over to me, thank God for Speedway safety, some of the best medics around. They're like, all right, well, let's get your helmet off. You seem to be breathing somewhat okay. I decided, I'll help you get me on the stretcher. So I stood up. You'll see why that's not a good idea later. I got to the infield care center, and my suit right behind me on this side, the air, thank God for it, saved my collarbones. But they wanted to cut it off. I'm like, don't cut my suit. If you have an airbag suit, you know why. They protect you, but they're expensive. So I wriggled out of it. They got my Under Armour shirt off, and Niagara Falls sweat like that. So the Speedway safety medics were like, you can take a ride with us. You can go with your, at the time, my girlfriend, now my wife. Thank God for her. But I was like, no, I'll take a ride with you guys. Get to the hospital and find out I had fractured the base of my skull, fractured my C6, non-displaced. But the real problem injury was I had what's called a chance fracture of my T6, T7. So and Craig, this is why I knew exactly what you're talking about with your back. But the big bony portion of your vertebrae, the vertebral body, as they call it, on T6 was almost completely obliterated and crushed. So it's about roughly an inch and a half thick. Normally I've got about a 1/4 inch left. But they pretty much immediately went into crazy medical mode, I guess I'll call it. And they came in and said, all right, if we can't take you here, Concord Hospital, which I can't say enough good things about. They have New Hampshire Neurospine has an office there. And I'll tell you, my neurosurgeon was one of the best I think I've ever, the only one I've ever had experience with, but they pretty much quickly said, hey, if you got to fly, do you want to go to Boston, Dartmouth, Hitchcock? You need to decide now. But anyways, got fused T3 through T10, so I got a bunch of titanium on my back. And it was 6 weeks in a neck brace. Oddly enough, a brace that looks like similar to yours, Craig, but I had a nice collar around mine. But I didn't go back to racing. It's not to say that you couldn't come back from this injury and go racing. But for me, it wasn't the right thing to do. It did take a little bit of, going to therapy, because there was some PTSD around it. We can get into that later, but yeah, that's kind of the serious injury for me. I definitely do want to say though, to those looking at perspective, getting into the sport, don't shy away from the sport because of my injury. I've stayed involved in the sport, not in racing, but I love racing too much to walk away from at least supporting it. But this is kind of a rarity injury. So.
Yeah. And you stay involved with it. You work up at Seacoast?
So I don't work at Seacoast. I go to the track with them. I guess kind of like I said in the beginning. So kind of a quick snippet of history. So I was actually, oddly enough, they had a benefit barbecue for me at the October round. I actually did show up to the September round. Jim remembers this. Clarky remembers this. I showed up to the September round 3 weeks later in a neck brace with a cane hobbling along. I'm one stubborn guy. But the October round, they had a benefit barbecue for me. And at the time it was LRS. So I was approached by some of the people that, were officials and in some official capacity for LRS, and like, hey, what'd you think about reffing for us? So 2019, I actually was an assistant referee for what was Loudon Road Race Series, now NEMRR, which was a very interesting perspective, but definitely too early in my life to be doing that. But then Seacoast Sports Cycle, when they picked up and started doing the Dunlop race tires, you'll actually see me now. I balance the lion's share majority, 99% of the Dunlop race tires that are coming out from the tire tent. I'm the guy balancing them. So.
Very good. And speaking of stubborn, we'll go to Sean, who just. I'm surprised you didn't get off the operating table and just turn your camera on.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah, so I actually just had a tendon transfer yesterday for part of my injury that happened back in 2020. I think a lot of people actually seen my crash and don't know it's me because they probably think I'm dead. It was actually the 2020 year, and I was the orange Gixxer that did the front flip into turn one, and the bike landed on me. I don't know if a lot of people have seen that, but I ended up tearing my ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus, IT band, hamstring, peroneal nerve, and tibial plateau fracture. And obviously that was a lot going on back then. I'm not really good with talk and stuff like that. I think the big reason I actually wanted to come on here is I also wanted to put a spin on like the aspect of crashing has when significant others or just family tries to point you away from the sport because all of a sudden it becomes too big of a risk in their eyes. And, the risk has always been there. And obviously that's a battle that everyone has after they have a bad crash. That's one thing I wanted to open up to get everyone to kind of talk about that. Cause like that was another struggle in itself, but to get back to my crash, originally when it happened, I don't even know how to say it. The corner workers were amazing. They got there so fast. And I was like, I honestly, I knew I crashed and then also the corner workers were there. And it was just it was very comforting because I still didn't know what was going on. I didn't get knocked out, but I remember trying to move my leg and I thought it was tib fib and I thought I broke my collarbone. I was also running an airbag, no collarbone break. So I'm also pro airbags and I definitely think that helped me out a lot. So obviously I had my knee surgery done. They were telling me 12 to 18 months recovery. And I remember the first time I got back on a bike, it was 6 months later, and I drove down to Florida to Jennings GP, not knowing if I'd be able to ride again. I got on the bike and I rode, and I ended up having foot drop from it. So it was a little weird to get used to riding it, obviously, because my foot just kind of dangles and I don't have control of it, which brings me to the surgery that I had yesterday. I did a tendon transfer where basically I kind of have like real life GP shifts on my right foot now. So they took a tendon that when you push down and out, they detached that and ran it through to the other side of my leg. So when I push down and out now, my foot's actually going to come up. So I can start to lift my foot again. I don't know how it's going to work yet, but I promise you guys the first time I try to walk, obviously I'm going to post a video because everyone knows me. I make jokes about it all the time. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a pretty gnarly thing, but I guess it's just like, you know, it could seem like the worst thing in the world. And it's just like, it depends how bad you want it. If you see someone that wants to get back out there, don't try to take it from them. For me, it's always been my therapy. And I personally didn't have any PTSD getting back on the bike. Going into turn one, the first times come back racing were a little weird because this is my first year back racing. But I got comfortable with super fast. And as anyone knows in my videos, I mean, it's like Ian Beam said, novice is again a novice, and I novice bad. And I learned from it, you know what I mean? But I don't know. Again, I don't know. I'm getting weird with talking because I'm not a big talker, but that's kind of my story. And I want to kind of open up everyone to like see the behind the scenes. And, you know, it sucks when someone tells you to stop doing something you love because something injured you, but that's part of the sport and it can happen in any sport. And I feel like some people don't understand as much with the sport because, yeah, it can be a little bit more serious, but there's injuries everywhere. And if this is someone's outlet, when you're out there by yourself in your helmet, there's nothing like it in the world. And that's what I try to tell people. And it's just, you know, I mean, it changed my life. My injury was life-changing, and it does enough for me to still get out there. So.
All right. And let's go to Adam, who's at work.
Yeah, I apologize. People keep calling me. But yeah, so I think my first major injury, it was a bittersweet weekend. I was an expert, and I just got my first expert win the day before in the rain. I think I won my race, expert motard race by, I don't know, I was going into turn one and people were coming out of turn 12. It was amazing. So I came off that high to follow up the next day in the dry, thinking, all right, now I got to win in the wet. I need to go for something in the dry. So I'm pushing. I got Shane Narbone and Trevor Chapizzi in front of me. And we come out of turn 9, and I see Shane back right off. And, okay, maybe a bike problem. So me and Trevor go blasting into 11. Well, he backed off because he noticed it started to rain. So we went sailing into turn 11 with slicks. Both Chapizzi and I crashed. I did the stupid thing and held on to my bike. And there's actually, RC got some good photos of it. My bike just starts spinning around. I'm holding on to my bike, and he's got all of the pictures. I ended up doing a grade 3 AC separation in my shoulder. Took me out of that was my last race of the weekend. I never regridded. Ended up back on my trailer floor, like pale with the sweats going, like Chris was talking about. And that was the end of my weekend. Went to the doctors. They told me grade 3 AC separation. Borderline surgery, no surgery. You can deal with it. We can do surgery, whatever you want to do. I chose no surgery because that would put me out for the rest of the season, and it was April. So I wanted to race the rest of the year, so I introduced myself to the world of KT tape, which still is commonly used in my world, which leads me to my next injury. So that was 2014 and 2015, I think. The very next year, I believe, April, cold, teaching Penguin. Been going slow all morning. It was a cold April day. We go out with my practice, and now I'm like, all right, let's go. Get the big boys out here. Go sailing into turn 3 after going slow for a couple sessions on cold Dunlops. And I ended up tucking the front going into turn 3. Now, this was before they put the pavement down, and there was grass on the left-hand side. So I tucked the front and then released the brake to try to straighten back up, and it shot me off the track into the grass. Tucked it, just went end over end over end, came to a stop. I remember looking down at my shield and seeing just a bunch of blood in my visor and was thinking like, oh, this can't be good. So like hobbled over the wall, waited for a corner worker to come over, which those guys are great. Every accident I've ever had at the track, somebody was like right there. I got off the wall, I could immediately feel something was wrong with my shoulder. Luckily, the blood in my helmet was just from the impact. I hit face first at some point, and it shoved the helmet into my face, and it just gave me a bloody nose and a cut lip. I ended up going to the infield care center. Went to the hospital for that one, and I had a grade 5, a grade 6, a grade 5 or 6 AC separator. It was the worst one you could get before your collarbone falls inferior. So it was completely separated from the AC. I broke my scapula, broke my arm, broke my collarbone. And there was one other injury in my shoulder. Mostly my shoulder took it all. Ended up coming back from the hospital. Got some KT tape at Walgreens on the way back with a prescription. Got myself taped up and still went out. And I ran the rest of the season like that. Waited till October, had surgery, got that repaired. So I've got dead people in my shoulder now. I've got anchors and cadaver tendons holding my AC joint back together. So rehab through that was 2016 or 2015. 2016 went off kind of okay. And then entered 2017. I was coaching one of my teammates, and we were headed down around the bowl. We were nose to tail. He lost the front end, and I went to go around the top side of him, but he had slowed down too much and just started sliding up the track instead of down the track. So I ended up T-boning him and going over the handlebars into the gravel trap. He got some broken ribs out of the deal and a scapula broken as well. I obliterated my collarbone. I did not have an airbag. And made it into the gravel trap. It was a pretty dramatic event. Like, I thought I had just killed my teammate because I just ran and I center punched his back. And he's laying motionless in the pea gravel, and I'm doing like a one-armed crawl trying to get to him through the pea gravel because I feel like I just seriously injured my teammate. But luckily the ambulance crew was right there quick. Tommy, he was right there real quick, and he flipped me over, and he was like a voice of like reason with me, stop moving around, They took me to the hospital, had that collarbone. It was pretty well destroyed, but it was still somewhat together. Just the pieces were, dangling around. I got out of the hospital that night, went to Walgreens, got some KT tape. This was on a Thursday, I believe, Thursday or Friday. That was a Thursday. Back when they still had Thursday practices. Friday Penguin practice, I went out with the students later in the afternoon. My wife helped me get some KT tape on and get me into my leathers. It was quite comical. I went out and rode around and realized that I could still do it. So I chose to race that weekend. I had 3 races to stay in the points. It was the last weekend of the season. So if I could get in my leathers, I was going out. I had to take my arm and actually put it on the handlebars to get myself up there. Jim helped me on pre-grid with my whole shot device because there was no way in heck I was doing that thing, which he does every weekend. Thank you again, Jim.
Hey, keep that quiet.
I went out, ended up racing, actually won one of the races. I feel like Rick Breen probably took it a little easy on me, though, on Sunday. But I went out just because, I told myself, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. Is it possible? It is possible. You've got this hurdle. Can you jump it? Yes, I can jump it. Prove it to yourself. And that's kind of why I did what I did. And I did catch a lot of flack for that from some people at the track that were like, oh, he must have been, high on all these pain pills in order to be on track. Or, I went to work for 2 weeks before I had surgery, which my boss wasn't too happy about, but I assured him that I was fine and, did some mobility stuff with him and just kind of ground through it. And then I had surgery 2 weeks later. They put a plate, some screws, and some safety wire to put all the pieces back together. My ortho was really impressed. I decided to race after the injury occurred, because I made his life a little bit more difficult. He showed me the one from Concord that showed the pieces kind of together. And then after I raced, they were kind of like doing one of these numbers, and I had a piece like trying to poke out of my skin. It was like, yeah, it made my life a little bit harder for me. But one thing I want to touch on, and Craig, you mentioned it earlier about the race family and your trailer was packed up for you and whatnot. One thing that will always stick with me, and I wouldn't say that I'm super friends with Rick Breen, and I'm going to throw his name out there because he was my hero that day. But I'm pretty close with Rick. You know, a lot of people at the track know Rick. But I came back from the hospital, and Rick had come over to see how I was, which wasn't out of the ordinary. I really appreciate it. And like 5-10 minutes into this conversation, he mentions the dogs. I have dogs in my trailer, little Chihuahua mixes. That guy not only helped pick my bike up on the track, but without being prompted or asked to, he made it over to my trailer, hooked my dogs up on leashes, brought them out to go to the bathroom, went through my trailer selling the dog food and fed my dogs for me, made sure they're good and left. Never said a word to me, never asked for a thank you. It just came up in conversation. And I was like, wait a minute, you did what? Wow, they like, oh yeah, they were fine for me. Oh, okay. And then like that, I was so super appreciative of that. Not to mention everybody that came over to see if I was all right too, but like just that one act was like, this is a family. Like this is the kind of thing that I would do for someone else. And it shows me that there's tons of other people that would do, and you can't replace that. Racing family is awesome.
Well, and I only touched a little bit on it, but and Sean brought up something too about and I have a lot of friends of mine. They're like, oh, dude, you're way too old for this shit. Blah blah blah. You need to get away from that. And no, dude, no. This is one of my passions. This is what I enjoy. Even I'm older, and I still enjoy it. I can still get around the track. I'm still physically fit. I can still do the job. And one thing that I learned through, and I'm retired Army, got a few deployments under my belt. And one thing that I learned a long time ago is, and I personally believe this, everybody's got an expiration date, and that date's predetermined as far as I can tell you, because it doesn't matter what you're doing, walking across the street, get hit by a bus, sitting watching TV, eating popcorn, and have a massive heart attack. You know what? I'm gonna when I go to the pearly gates, I'm gonna be sliding in there sideways with my hair on fire, saying that was one hell of a ride, because I'm gonna have no regrets when I get to the point in my life, And again, the family atmosphere, and like I said, it doesn't matter what organization you go to. It just seems everybody jumps in there to help you out as much as they possibly can, and it was even like that back in the day. I mean, if somebody got banged up, everybody would go over, either help fix their bike, help them get loaded up, give them a ride to the hospital or whatever if they don't want to go by ambulance. And a lot of us kind of push through a lot of the pain as well, because I've ridden hurt before, and it's not a lot of fun. But yeah, the family support, the friendships, and everything. Your race friends are way different than your regular friends, because the race friends understand the whole thing. They know where you're coming from, and they understand. But it's like when the doctor told me, the ER doctor down at St. Joseph's Candler in Savannah. He said, he came in and he says, "Well, you broke your back," and the first thing that popped into my mind, not anything about the medical side of it. Oh, am I going to have to give up racing? That was the first thing that popped into my mind. And then as we discussed it, and I found out it wasn't going to be that serious, and it's something I'm going to 100% recover without surgery. I felt a little bit better about that. But that's the way I look at things. And if anybody else has any different ways of looking at it, by all means, jump in. And
So
if anybody watching's got any questions, post them up in the chat. I see Eli's been over there. And
he's been kind of quiet. He's been tame this week.
yeah, he has.
But I want to kind of jump in with some of the, like you say, none of us is making forever on this earth. So do what you love.
Jim, real quick, I don't know if you saw the survey. I was doing some research on this, and 10 out of 10 people aren't making out of this alive. So
see, they did a poll. It must be true.
so
So everything's dangerous. Waking up in the morning is dangerous. You're going to fall down off your steps. Do something you like. But racing itself, yes, it's more dangerous than playing golf. Yes, I know your buddy got hit in the head. But the thing we've had over the years is actually better safety. Like we have air vests now. I won't ride without one. If it protects you better. Helmets have come a long way. Just everything's been better. And what I've seen, doing this for the amount of time I've done, in the past few years, the number of riders that we've paid out to has dwindled because people aren't getting as seriously hurt all the time. When I first started, it was a lot. But through the years of new safety equipment and the air fence, those tires are foolish. You might as well just put a boulder out there. That'd be softer. Those tires are useless. But all this air fence that we've got has minimized the big crash. They still happen. Obviously, guys get hurt. But in the end, it's no more dangerous than walking down the street, bicycling, running, clipped by a car. So we have seen over the years it being a much safer sport than and that just with the advent of all the new safety stuff.
And truth about that too is like I don't even street ride anymore. Like all these people, they're texting and driving, they're distracted driving. I would never feel safe on the street riding a bike. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
I still ride on the street because I gotta get riding in somehow. So
Yeah, I got a big road sofa. I got a big Harley Ultra I drive on the street. And me and my wife, we went out to Sturgis this year just to do some touring. And I still enjoy getting out. But like I said, I'm driving a 900-pound tank too. So
you got a roll cage.
Sorry?
Pretty much a roll cage.
Yeah, you could probably put one on there. I don't think it'd make it much heavier. But
I quit riding on the street for quite some time too. Last spring, only when gas was like $9 a gallon, did I buy, another bike. I bought a $3,500 Kawasaki Mean Streak, and I would cruise to work on that because it's a 45-mile round trip for me. And it gets pretty expensive after a week's long of driving that far. So, but I totally hear you, Sean. Like for the longest time, I was turned off from riding on the road just because I had seen so much bullshit out there, pardon my French, with drivers doing the distracted driving thing and not paying attention and coming over the yellow lines. And I wanted nothing to do with it. The track was better. I love Eric's speech about that during Penguin. It's a lot safer than the road. There's no sand on the road. There's no mailboxes, no old ladies backing out of driveways. Everybody's going the same direction. If there's something in the track, there's someone waving a flag, jumping up and down at you. Ambulances are right there. Like that was my thing. I decided to go back on the street. Chris, I definitely understand you getting your jonesing out, you going out on the street, but I'm sure. I mean, you're a super smart dude, so you know what you're getting yourself into, and you're aware. Your situational awareness is, I'm sure, is
And to jump on that, so to jump on what Sean's saying, and then to kind of answer that situational awareness thing. So when I was in the racing mode, I didn't ride on the street much. But now that, so I actually, behind all this stuff, I got a 210 660 factory actually back there. So I got the 660 bug as well. But the situational awareness, one thing I can say is track days and then racing completely changed how I ride. So when I started riding on the street, I kind of put the breakdown. It probably was, I was focused 90% of my attention on what's the bike doing under me. Like, oh, the tire slipped. Oh shoot, what do I got to do? Oh, what was that bump? And 10% of my attention as a street rider was that car or that person texting or grandma's backing out of the driveway or that animal's running around. On the flip side, now that I'm done with racing, I put maybe 2% of my attention, period, into, oh, the tire slipped, the suspension did. I don't care. If you look at your race footage, your bike's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And, I've shown my wife past race footage and she's like, did you realize the bike was all over the place? Nope. So because of that, I can now focus like 98% of my attention on the grandma backing out of the driveway, the person texting. So I can focus nearly 100% of my attention on all the idiots around me that are driving four wheels. So really that situational awareness has been changed for the better because of racing.
Yeah, and racing does in fact make you a better road rider. There's no doubt about that. I think it quickens your reaction times. It makes you a little bit quicker reacting to things, and it just makes you a better rider overall. Even when I'm riding the road sofa, I went down to Deals Gap last spring, and I had to keep telling myself, slow down, because I'm dragging hard parts, which is not hard to do on a Harley. And I've got full Olin suspension on it as well.
Yeah.
Because I like to have a bike that handles well, and not that does, but it handles a whole lot better than a stock one, that's for sure. But yeah, and Eli was talking about some of his injuries, and then of course the incident with his dad last year.
And that was in the pits. That wasn't even on track.
It wasn't even on track.
It happens. It has happened in the pits, previous times as well. But you kind of get complacent in the pits. Oh, I don't need my helmet. Oh, I'm just going down the road to bend in a set of brakes. It can happen anywhere, and so you just got to be aware. And yeah, like you guys were saying about the track being safer. That was one of the biggest arguments when I wanted to start racing with my mother. She didn't like the fact I had a road bike. Never mind, now I want to go racing. And I use all those same things with, well, everyone's going the same way. No one's jumping out in front of you. There's 3 ambulances. They're 30 seconds away from you. And, like Chris said, we have the best ambulances around. The guys and girls that have picked us up, taken care of us, it's awesome. And they're right there. You're not laying in the street for 10, 15, 20 minutes before somebody gets to you. So racing is safer, but, there's still that line. You just can't cross it.
Speaking of the ambulances, I remembering back, I feel like I hadn't even stopped crashing. And the EMTs were there, the corner workers were there. I didn't even have time to catch a breath, and they're right there. So, yeah, best medical crew around.
Yeah, no, they definitely are.
Well, that's great, and I'm really glad that we did this. I mean, like I said, it's kind of a taboo subject that not a lot of people like to talk about, but it needs to be talked about every now and then. And if you have yourself a plan, especially if you travel, and I plan on doing some traveling this year. I plan on going down to Jersey, maybe do a round with CCS down to VIR or something like that. But you got to have some kind of a plan, just in case. because if you get tied up somewhere or you end up in a hospital like I did for 3 days in Savannah, Georgia. And then my wife wasn't comfortable driving the rig, which it's just a pickup truck and a 15-foot trailer. So I had to drive back with the back brace on and not taking any of the narcotics. I was doing the Toradol, which helped quite a bit with the inflammation and keeping that down. But that was a miserable 2-day drive back. And then luckily we managed to get a handicapped hotel room that had a sofa in it that I could sleep sitting up because, and right now I still can't go upstairs and lay on the bed because it's after about 5 minutes, I'm right up because I keep wanting to roll over or something. And that's going to be a little bit for that.
I'll send you a link to an incline pillow that you should get. Might have a little experience with this.
I've had a few nights in a recliner too. Happens again.
But I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about it. It's a tough subject to talk about. And I know Sean's probably, his nerve block is going away and he's probably about ready to go eat some perks or something here.
Yeah, I'm about to get the foot up.
And I've been sitting in this chair almost a little bit too long because we're coming right up on an hour now. But if you guys would just hang out for 1 second, I'm going to do my closing spiel. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. Everybody that tuned in tonight, everybody that watches it. Hey, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I really need to get my subscribers up. I got all these people watching it and nobody clicking that subscribe button. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You only have to look at my mug that was made for radio. Sorry. But hit that subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, give us a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm. And if you're out there riding on twos, make sure you keep the shiny side up, rubber side down. And as always, have yourself a great day.
I think if I could say one thing before we go, the biggest way I'd kind of wrap up this chapter is like, if we're willing to risk, us already being through it, everyone knows what the risks are. Just understand what that means to them for them to actually risk that because they're the one in the seat. So obviously it means more to them. So try to understand both sides of it.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.